Welcome to the Refreshing Leadership Podcast with me, Maya Goodker. And we talk about decluttering on this podcast, but I also say that there's no point having a beautifully organized desk, but a completely chaotic, reactive work schedule that feels busy but isn't actually moving you forward. Your time is your most valuable resource. So in this episode, we're going to focus on ways to declutter your work to-do list, especially if you work inside an organization. This can be really, really tricky. There's a lot of time management literature out there, but it doesn't really speak to the life inside organizations. And what I offer here, though, is things that have worked for my clients. So the stuff that actually does make it through the stress test of real people inside organizations doing great things. The first definition that I want to start with is strategic time versus firefighting time. Now, a lot of the people that I work with are incredibly reliable. If something is asked of them, they will deliver. If there is a meeting, they show up. If there's a deadline, they meet it. Their outward accountability is very high. In the language of Gretchen Rubin, who talks of the 4 tendencies, they are obligers. What that often means, though, is that their inward accountability, the time they set aside for their own thinking, planning, and more strategic work, gets compromised. And they might sit down to do something important, something that actually moves things forward, but something else is required urgently, and they drop that strategic work to deal with that issue, right? It's easier. It's nice to feel needed. It's the default, right? We can all just spend our day reactive. I used to say when I was a program director inside London Business School, I could have just spent all day happily tapping away at my computer. Everybody would have loved me because I would have got back to everybody on time. A lot of people were always needing and chasing me for things. But if I had done that, I would have felt sort of satisfied in the moment. I would have had good feedback from people, but I would never have done the stuff that I really needed to do, that I was being paid to do, which was to be directing a portfolio of programs, designing programs. So what I think is important here is that the business as usual work will get done eventually. The question is not whether it gets done. It's when and with what level of energy. So I never want you to use your best cognitive energy, your freshest thinking for that business as usual stuff. That is such a waste. It's like having your best cup of coffee and then wasting it on mundane tasks. It's like doing an amazing warm up in the gym and then never going and lifting the actual weights. So we want to use that best cognitive energy for the stuff that is less defined, more complex, has a longer term payoff. All the things that our monkey brain struggles with, right? Our monkey brain likes things that are immediate term, that have quick reward. It likes reactive operational work, but we want to move that to later in the day. So really, this is the eat the frog idea, but it is applied in a way that works for organizations. So let's actually apply this to your to-do list and what belongs on your to-do list in the first place. So there are a couple of lenses here. The first is, what do you want to be known for? What area is your strength, your niche? This is what I'm really good at. People sort of know that I'm the go-to person on this. Because when you get clear on that, it can be quite a relief. You realize that you don't need to be excellent at everything. And work can become a lot more enjoyable because there's a natural synergy between what you love, what you're known for, what you get to spend your time doing, and your strengths. Instead of being a generalist who is reliable across everything, you start to become known for specific areas and thought leadership, and hopefully this stuff can align with what you care about as well. I had a client in the entertainment industry. She cared deeply about increasing opportunities for other Black women in her field, and she'd reached a really great position in her field and became involved in board level discussions around this. So she had access to a lot of really high profile conversations with senior stakeholders. She had clarity on what mattered to her. When her boss returned from maternity leave, there was a natural reshuffle of who was attending what. And she was happy to let some other things go because she already had her space. She knew where she added value, and she didn't want to have an insane calendar. She was able to make those decisions as to where she wanted to fight to still stay at the table. And that is the clarity that you get once you know what you want to be known for. So if you don't already have a thing that you're known for, maybe go and ask some colleagues, what would they associate with you? What would you be the go-to person for? Because this is one of those things that, and I've had a lot of people go through this on the Vision Builder and feed this back to me. Only when you go and get outside feedback do you fully appreciate this, because we are naturally, many of us are going to be quite modest about this. We're less likely to appreciate all the things that we are seen as the expert on. We're much better off hearing it from those around us. So that is the first lens that I want you to have. Now, there is a complementary piece that goes with this, and that is letting go of perfection. So Tim Ferriss calls this library fines, racking up some library fines. So do you want to be the person that never ever accumulates a library fine but never gets to their important work? Or are you willing to let a few library fines, metaphorical or real, rack up, and a few non-critical things get a little bit less perfectly managed because you're focused on what really matters? And I'm smiling right now, actually, because I have just seen some notifications in my inbox of library late notices. So I'm very much in that library fine category. And at a certain level, I will allow myself to be chased on certain things if that means that I can redirect my energy to the things that are going to really make the difference. This is not about being sloppy. It's selective and it's intentional. So if you are seen as somebody typically who comes back immediately on WhatsApp, and if you haven't replied for like 3 hours, you say, sorry for the delayed response, then that can be adapted, for example, to perhaps allowing yourself to have more of a 24-hour or beyond a reply window. And that is not you being late to the process. You have very much planned when you're going to get back to certain invites, for example, on WhatsApp. So it's just about being more intentional and not being so reactive. Because, and I hear this from my clients who do maybe have ADHD, they will say that when they are stressed, what will happen? Because I've asked some clients, I've said, so what I've noticed is that I've had to send a few chasers to you, and I will often get a really immediate response to you from that, but I won't have had the original replies that I needed for us to set up our process. And what they will say is that when they are stressed and busy, they start to lose control of like what's important. And then the minute that they get an email from somebody, they reply immediately because it's suddenly gone back to the top of their list. And that's fine when it is something important, but what we don't want to do is spend our entire days just responding to the loudest voices, the top of the list, the top of the pile, right? Because then we're not going to be able to do the needle moving stuff. So that's the first one. The second one is the lens of promotable versus non-promotable work. Now, there is a huge amount of work involved in any job that is necessary but will not move the needle in your career. It won't get you promoted, recognized. It won't meaningfully change your career trajectory, but it still needs to be done. So it's not about, do I do this or not? It's about the order that you do things in and how much of your time and energy each area gets. And that's why I often encourage my clients to think ahead to their next appraisal. When they sit down with their bosses in 6 to 12 months, what is going to make that an outstanding conversation? What were the specific outcomes, contributions, projects that would clearly position you for progression? If you can have that conversation explicitly with your line manager, ask them directly, what would make this a standout year? Not only will that give you clarity, but when additional work comes in, which it obviously always does, you will now have a reference point and be able to say, not automatically, yes, I will do that, but let me look at how this fits alongside the priorities we've already agreed and then come back to you. And that pause is powerful. It allows you to move from being more reactive, yes person, team player, which is rewarded by organizations. Organizations love you, to being more resource aware, because you are not an infinite resource. And nor is your team. And in many organizations, things are not perfectly filtered at the top, so work gets passed down. Unless you apply that filter at some point, you become that person that's absorbing everything. And I have a special name for this because so many of my amazing clients realize that they are this person. They are the shock absorber inside the organization, highly capable, highly reliable, therefore given more and more responsibility. Also, they protect their teams, right? Because they don't want their teams to be overloaded. So that's why they are these shock absorbers. But of course, there's going to be a limit, right? There's only so much that you can squeeze that stress ball, and at some point it's unsustainable. The sooner you start having more intentional conversations about time, and you are seen as somebody who's able to have those conversations, they will feel slightly uncomfortable first. Then the sooner you're able to do that, the sooner you can start to take back some of that control and strategic clarity about what you're focusing on. So what I'm saying in this episode is a couple of things, a couple of lenses. It is not to say, don't focus on team-related goals. Don't focus on the work, the day job. But when you are choosing the order with which to do the stuff, think about the stuff that you want to be known for, and think about what are the promotable tasks, and make sure that those things, which are often a little bit more vague, a little bit harder, there's no one tapping you on the shoulder for them at the end of the week, make sure those get done first, early on in the week, early on in the day, and then those are your big rocks in that glass jar. You can fill up with as many little pebbles as you want, and you're a high achiever. You will get that other stuff done. It's just that the other way round doesn't work, because that's how our energy works, right? We are not going to, on a Friday, have the same cognitive clarity that we would have had maybe on a Monday or a Tuesday morning. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And if you manage to look at your to-do list and not necessarily cross off, but put some brackets around or move further down the list, then I would be delighted to hear about it. And if you do manage to cross some stuff off, then you have to let me know. Drop me a message or on LinkedIn, or send me an email at info@mayagoodcare.com. I would love to hear about it. I do a whole pillar on this stuff because my clients, they are amazing, but they know and they acknowledge how much low-hanging fruit there is in their calendars and to-do lists that is going to enable them to be so much more effective. So I have an entire coaching curriculum around this, a set of videos that does this step by step. So if that is of interest to you, or you know someone that is of interest to, send this to them, and there'll be a link to the information about that pillar in the show notes. Like all of my pillars, there is curriculum, and then you have one-to-one time with me. So if that's of interest, then you will have all the details for that. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye-bye.